So what is network segmentation? If you look at Wikipedia, Wikipedia defines this as the act or profession of splitting computer networks into subnetworks, each being a network segment or a network layer. I think when you look at the nature of a lot of the breaches that we're seeing in the industry today, that's probably not good enough. So I have my own kind of view on it, and that would be, better yet, the establishment of discrete networks that do not share common routing or security elements. And, that can be accomplished in a variety of different ways. And the reason why I say that is, as we go through the presentation, it's those common shared routing and security elements that are serving as the basis of lateral breach propagation and vertical breach propagation in the network. Segmentation, its advantages are to improve security, to reduce congestion, and to reduce problem cascade throughout the network. So what's interesting about this is Target is the second highest spending company on IT security, behind Best Buy but ahead of Walmart. So this really isn't a matter of how much money you throw at the problem. And they probably had the best IT resources, very qualified, talented people, but still errors are made, and there's a fundamental problem that the connection-oriented networks by which enterprises base their networks on today are inherently insecure. There's no reason why a breach should start in one area and result in the loss of 40 million cards. So the question is, if Target couldn't protect this network, why do you think you can? What are you doing that's so special that's going to stop that from happening? Can you throw more money at it than they can? I don't think many companies can do that. When you have something like the pesky internet that decides to come around and start creating problems, and you have cloud services and Wi-Fi and mobility beginning to open up that network, it began to erode the hard outer shell of that enterprise network. And it created all of these different openings. And that different openings really creates a blurring of where does your network perimeter begin and end. The private enterprise network really no longer exists. And if we operate under the assumption that it does, we're operating under a false assumption. And that you can't really face reality under that premise. The reality is the attack surface area is broad and it's porous. And the reality is that breaches will happen. You can't stop all breaches. They will happen. CIOs must defend against all of these vulnerabilities, while hackers just have to exploit one. And if not properly segmented, a single breach can unravel the entire network. And now we've seen this again and again and again. And this goes to the heart of the matter, why segmentation is so fundamentally important. It takes only one vulnerability. Eric Schmidt, the vice chairman of Google, at the Gartner Symposium in Orlando last year, laid it out very, very eloquently. He stated, look, it is just absolute folly that we think extending public IP-based VPNs into the heart of our network, opening up holes in our firewalls, is secure. It's not secure. He said, from his words, enterprises are going to have to rip out their existing architectures and they're going to have to implement application-centric network architectures. Last year, in 2013, 100% of the breaches of POS systems did not start in the payment network. They started somewhere else, and they worked their way into the payment network. Under the current methods of security, enterprises will have to double their spending just to address 84% of the attacks. That's unrealistic. When it takes one vulnerability and you have to double your spending to just address 84% of the attacks, this is a losing game. Why do we want to still play it? So what do? You invert your security priorities, and you do it now. Networks are dynamic. They're constantly changing. You're trying to roll out new applications. You're having to do new patches. You're having to add new access control rules to accommodate this, that, or the other thing. That cause and effect nature of changes in the network make the current approach so difficult to actually pull off that it's just not realistic to think that you can do it consistently every time. That's why 2/3 of the breaches are related to mistakes. Complexity equals vulnerability. So network-wide segmentation, it basically takes the VLAN, the wireless LAN, the collapsed LAN, and it maps it directly to a software-defined network that extends for that application, that network traffic, all the way across the WAN to its endpoint. And from there, it creates virtual router and firewall instances for each and every application network. It removes that shared ACL, that shared firewall functionality, and it creates virtual instances for every one of these micro networks. And the traffic types are never intermingled from end to end. Therefore, your card data environment and your patient data environment is collapsed down to this discrete two endpoints. So, LAN segmentation efforts are being defeated at the WAN connection interface, and it really renders them useless. We're spending a lot of time to do something that's only a half of a job, and that's not an effective way to approach it. The SDN model actually has a centralized universal policy controller, and so if you need to make a policy change to a particular network, you can make that policy change simultaneously across all virtual application networks that you define it for. And you can do it consistently. So the economics of physical segmentation are difficult to justify. It actually becomes a hindrance to the whole process of achieving your corporate strategic imperatives. When you look at micro-segmentation or application level segmentation, it's also called micro-segmentation commonly, and that is most efficiently and most feasible in SDN environments. That's the benefit of software-defined networks. And it places each app into its own dedicated logical network environment. It eliminates security policy conflicts. It reduces the CDE and PDE, patient data environment scope. It contains application and network server breaches to the affected network or application server breach or segment. It eliminates the propagation. It frees the application to take its optimal route path, and it reduces problem cascade, and it improves third-party access to the network. The security industry is feasting on the complexity of the enterprise networks. They're telling you, just buy more layers, you're gonna be more secure. But it's not proving out. Actually, it doesn't prove out to the 4,781 publicly reported breaches in the last decade. All right, that's over a breach a day. Security about layers conventional wisdom has failed real-world validation. It's hard to make an argument to say, why would I spend another dollar on perimeter security when it's a probability it's not going to work? Why am I going to spend another dollar on detection when it's a probability somebody else is going to detect it before I do? You know, why would we continue to invest in the same losing architecture? Why are we going to play a losing game? We have to relook at this. We have to look at it from a basis of how is containment going to be the basis of my network architecture. And we've been doing this for about 3 years. We have about 30,000 sites in production with some of the top blue chip companies in the world. Shell Oil, ExxonMobil, Little Caesars, O'Reilly Auto Parts. But I think we bring a lot of experience. But there are a lot of options. And given time, there's going to be more options. And so you do have options coming out there. There are options to change your architecture. You just have to figure out what's the right one for you. There are many emerging options, but few proven options.